Gemma Hood. In your discussion on the Mormon Stories podcast about your life after leaving Scientology, you mentioned that you had suffered PTSD as a result of your experiences. It is incredibly admirable that you have become so willing and able to openly discuss your difficult past to help people. I wondered what advice you might have for others suffering from PTSD to overcome their demons and use them as a force for positive change in their lives. Okay, well, here's a chance where I get to give a little bit of advice, like I was just talking about in my last answer. I don't know that I have any kind of special lock on this at all, other than I have the gift of gab. I talk, and I don't have a problem talking. I communicate quite readily. And I've come to learn over the last few years, as I've sort of shed some of the Scientology compunctions and habits and compulsions, that I'm not actually as communicative as I used to think I was. I'm not as extroverted as I used to think I was. I tend to introvert a little bit at social events and stuff. But the driving purpose of helping people is front and center and always has been, and as far as I can see into the future, always will be. And that purpose is what has kept this going and kept me going more than any other single thing. So I say that not because I'm trying to toot a horn or put myself on a pedestal. I'm putting that out there as a motivation for potentially for people out there, who are watching this right now, as to how you can help overcome some of the reticence or shyness or difficulty or even, mental stress and trauma that one tends to experience sometimes when triggered by things that turn on some of those PTSD symptoms. I know it's rough. I've been there, man. I get it. And I've talked to other people who have experienced PTSD, and of course, therapists and stuff about this. And it's not a light burden, and it's not something to take lightly. That all being said, kind of taking it lightly has been the best way I've had to deal with it. Because I haven't had the benefit of going and getting hours and hours of therapy or anything like that. I've educated myself instead, and then I've tried to deal with it that way. And the catharsis for me has been talking to you guys about it, which is why I keep putting out there that I think being maybe not a full-blown activist, but certainly at least somebody who's willing to sit and answer questions or talk about their experiences. I'm not sure that I have really super great advice about how to bare your soul or how much you should or shouldn't. Everybody has their own individual comfort zone. But what I can tell you is this desire or motivation to help people gets me over a lot of hurdles. I don't really think about maybe my past experience of not having a lot of privacy also contributes to my ability to just sort of bleh stuff about myself that other people seem to have a hard time doing. So maybe that's also part of why I can talk the way that I do about stuff, is because I have a very long background of not being allowed to have secrets. That was kind of a new thing I had to learn, and learning about boundaries was a new thing for me. And only, again, very recently has a new layer of that come up where it's become even more clear to me how and why boundaries exist. But taking on the role of self-therapy or self-help requires that you interact with other people. You can't do it in a vacuum. None of us are alone in this world, and none of us should pretend that we are. There's a support system for all of us out there, and we just have to either build it or find it, or a combination of those two things. We tend to start with family. Sometimes that's helpful and useful. Sometimes family are triggering and more harmful. But maybe there's even some remote family member or some, familial connection that's not so triggering, not so bad. And if you can glom on to something that's already there as a support structure, it's a good idea to do so if you can. within limits, of course, and avoiding toxic relationships or toxic connections, because that's the last thing you need. In other words, you wouldn't want to come out of a cult like Scientology and go to your family if the family members kept telling you every day what a fucking idiot you were for being a Scientologist all that time. That's not helpful. And that you don't need to hear stuff like that. And you don't need stuff like that being put on your plate, right? It's not useful. And for family and friends of people who are involved in cults, please don't do that. It just sets the person back. What they need is kindness and compassion and support and understanding, not judgment. They got plenty of judgment in the cult. They don't need to come out of a cult and get more judgment from you. Anyway, probably a little bit all over the place on this answer because I'm just drawing things from all over the place as I'm answering this here as it comes to me. But all of this does fit under this umbrella of what advice I would give to people who are suffering from triggering or from PTSD is to, basically get into an environment somehow, anyhow, where toxic elements aren't there, and then just start talking to the people that you can talk to. Just start getting it out. If you can't talk, write it down. Get a journal. Write a book, write a story, write a poem, write a sentence, write a word. Just start with that. Just start writing. For some people, that'll be an amazing form of self-therapy. For some, it won't be. It's okay. Give it a try. See what happens. And just build and use whatever support system you can around yourself. That's the best advice I know how to give. I know it's general. I know it's not specifically helpful for you who are watching this right now. And that's why the personal connection, and that's why I say I'm willing to help. There are other people who are willing to help out there. There are actually, once you start looking, there are an amazing number of resources out there. And I'm not just talking about $100 an hour therapists. I mean, there are government resources, social service resources. When I did some suicide prevention training here in Colorado, I was blown away by the 2-page small print number of places I could call to get help if I was feeling suicidal. There's lots and lots of resources out there. That's just one thing. That's just one part of the help that's available. There are other social resources out there. Most people are actually kind of amazing when it comes to wanting to help other people. If you get past all the baloney and nonsense, people are actually pretty kind and pretty amazing. And that's still true today. I still firmly believe that. So overcoming your own inability or unwillingness to ask for help might be one of the first biggest barriers, but please trust me when I tell you that it is a necessary barrier to get over, because it is there are great benefits to be reaped by asking for some help, and that's anyway. I hope all of that did something useful. It was a lot. I was kind of all over the place there, but I hope that advice is somewhat informative and helpful. And I'm sure I will talk about this more again in the future. But thanks, Gemma, for asking about that. I'm glad I got a chance to talk about that a little bit.